Just like in the fairy tales where ghosts can fly through closed doors, then the Ghosts of Creuss can fly through different wormholes like no other faction can. And if there are not enough doors out in the galaxy, then the Ghosts of Creuss can add even more during the game, so that all the other players can feel the chill whenever the ghosts enter their room. Hi guys, welcome to this faction guide about the Ghosts of Creuss. In this video I will go through the awesome abilities that this faction got, and their specialty is wormholes, so we get some superpowers when our units are either standing in or flying through wormholes, and we can even place more of them out on the game board. I will also demonstrate how you can play the first round with 3 different strategy cards. And in the first round we want to produce some more units in our home system, especially the carrier that we lack, because we need some more capacity for our ground forces. Then we probably want to research the technology, and we want to gain control of 2 systems, where one of them can be the legendary planet called Malice, and this planet is only reachable by the Ghosts of Creuss in the very first round. So let's get started. Let's first have a look at the abilities that makes the Ghosts of Creuss very flexible when it comes to moving around the game board by using the wormholes. The first faction ability is called Quantum Entanglement, and that makes all the A and B wormholes adjacent to each other for the Creuss player, because all the other players always need to enter and exit the same wormhole whenever they fly through. But we can enter one of them and exit the other. And then we have our agent. The card says, after a player activates a system that contains a non-delta wormhole, you may exhaust this card. If you do, that system is adjacent to all other systems that contain a wormhole during this tactical action. So this means that whenever we activate a system that contains either an alpha, beta or gamma wormhole, then we can use the agent to activate out on Malice, because it only contains a gamma wormhole from the very beginning of the game. If other players want to fly out to Malice before the ghost player eventually does, then they have to find another gamma wormhole by either exploring planets or exploring the frontier tokens. So this is why it is a little bit special that the ghost player can do so right from the beginning of the game. So the only systems that we cannot fly into by using the agent is our home system, the Creuss gate system that is attached to the game board, and eventually the system that contains our flagship, because those 3 systems will contain a delta wormhole, which is the only limitation to when it comes to using our agent. So this brings us to our other faction ability called Slipstream, which adds +1 to the movement value of all ships that start in either our home system, an alpha or a beta wormhole. So where a carrier can normally only move 1 system, now it can move 2 with this ability, and 3 if we add gravity drive, and then it can all of a sudden catch up with any escorting destroyers or cruisers, so we can move up to 3 systems away, really opening up the game board for us. Then we have our flagship. It rolls 1 die and hits on a 5, and it got capacity 3. But the special thing about this flagship is that it contains a delta wormhole, and we get to say whether the flagship moves before or after other units that is also about to move. So let me demonstrate how this is useful. So if we decide to move the flagship before the other systems, then we can first position the flagship and the delta wormhole, and then we can fly in reinforcements from both the Creuss gate system and our home system. But we can also decide to move the flagship after the other ships, and this is used when we activate either the Creuss gate or our home systems. Then we first let all the other ships fly through the delta wormhole in the flagship, and then the flagship closes the wormhole after it when it flies through its own wormhole. There is just one minor catch by having our flagship out among our opponents, and that is a technology called light wave deflectors, because this technology allows players to fly through system that contains other players' ships. And since our flagship contains a delta wormhole, and so does our home system, then our flagship gives direct access to our home system from wherever it is out on the game board. So if we have produced our flagship, we need to keep track of what other players have researched the light wave deflectors technology, and make sure that they don't take advantage of exactly this. As you may know, the Ghosts of Creuss also got 3 extra wormhole tokens, and they contain either an A, B or Gamma wormhole. But before diving into these, I think we should have a look at how the first round can go with the trade strategy card. And the players who have had turns before us have already taken their turns, and now it gets to be our turn. So as our first action, we will activate out on Malice, and we will flip our agent to do so. And then let's move out there with a carrier, 2 infantry and 2 fighters and a destroyer. And let's have a look at what we get. Mercenary outfit. You may place 1 infantry from your reinforcements on this planet. Of course we do that. And we also get the Exterix headquarters. You may exhaust this card at the end of your turn to gain 2 trade goods or convert all of your commodities to trade goods. So we want to gain 2 trade goods because we want to trade with the other players when we play the trade strategy card. But before we pass the turn along to the Warfare and the Imperium player, we have a quick conversation with them. With the Imperium player because we want them to play the technology card early. So we could be interested in making a little better deal for the Imperium to make sure that they do that. And with the Warfare player, we also want to trade with them, and maybe we can get them to place one of our Wormhole Creuss tokens here. And both of the players sounds interested in making this deal. But what the Warfare player says to us is that they probably want to trade with Argent. So he is willing to place the Wormhole token in case that I also replenish the Argent player. And I think that's completely fine. So now the Warfare player takes his turn and he moves all of his units out here. And I don't show the activations, but of course he needs to activate the system. And the Imperium player places a destroyer out here and explores this frontier token, and then everybody else takes their turn and it gets to be us again. So now we play the trade strategy card and we gain the 3 trade goods and 4 commodities. And as agreed with the Imperium player, then we replenish them as well. And we want to trade 4 for 4 with them so that he plays the technology card early in the game round. And let's say that the yellow player is a 2 commodity faction, so he is also replenished, but we're not neighbors at this point yet. And we also promised to replenish the Argent flight, so they also got 3 commodities out there. And now he becomes the Warfare player, so he plays his card and lifts the token from this system so he can move again in the next round. And the Imperium player plays the technology card as promised, so we do the secondary of that. Spend 1 token and 4 resources on our home system, and then we will research the sling relay technology. It's an action. Exhaust this card to produce 1 ship in any system that contains one of your space docks. And then everybody else takes their turn and it gets to be us. And we just got this technology in time because we want to use this immediately. So we pay 3 trade goods to produce 1 carrier in our home system. And now the yellow player moves out and gains control of Hope's End here. And he will get a mech as well. There we go. And the Imperium player moves out and gains control of some more planets. And when it gets to be our turn again, we can now activate the Rigel systems here, and we can only gain control of 2 of them, unfortunately, but we might as well do it. And we'll move our destroyer out there as well. And let's have a look at Rigel 3 first. Functioning base. You may gain 1 commodity, or you may spend 1 trade good or 1 commodity to draw 1 action card. And we might as well do that. We have an extra 1, so we'll spend a trade good. And let's see what we get. Confusing legal text. Okay, that's not relevant for this round. And let's have a look at Rigel 2. Local fabricators. You may gain 1 commodity, or you may spend 1 trade good or 1 commodity to place 1 mech from your reinforcements on this planet. And we definitely want to do that. And now we have become neighbors with the yellow player, so we hand him the Creuss F Promissory Note. And now it gets to be his turn, so it gives us the Promissory Note back immediately, and then he places a better wormhole here, so that he can become neighbors with the Argent flight in the beginning of round 2. And now the rest of the players take their turns, and we do our final action, and that is to activate our home system. And then we want to produce 4 infantry and 2 destroyers for the 4 resources that we got. And now we have gained control of most of the planets in 2 systems. We have produced a lot of units, researched 1 technology, traded with the other players, and we also got a better wormhole out on the game board. So I think this is a fairly good first round for the Ghost player. And now it's time to hit that subscribe button so that you can get even more faction guides and other Twilight Imperium content. When we play as the Ghosts, we have 3 additional tokens we can use. They are called the Creuss wormholes, and we want to get these out on the game board as soon as possible. And there are 3 good reasons for this. The first one is that it opens up the map more for us, and we get +1 to movement whenever we start it in one of the wormholes. And the second reason is our faction ability called Dimensional Splicer, and that will automatically produce a hit against an opponent's ship in case we enter space combat in one of the wormholes. And lastly, it's a requirement for our hero to either have wormholes or units in any 2 systems that we want to swap whenever we play the hero. But I will get back to him a little later in the video. But first, let's have a look at the 3 ways we got to get these tokens out on the game board. The first one is our Promissory Note, as we saw in the trade strategy card demonstration before. And the card says, Creuss if, at the start of your turn during the action phase, place or move a Creuss wormhole token into either a system that contains a planet you control or a non-home system that does not contain another player's ships. Then return this card to the Creuss player. And if I find it hard to find another player to take the Promissory Note and help us out in this way, then I will look at the map and see if I can find a good reason for a given player to accept it and see if they can benefit from having an extra wormhole out on the game board, and then suggest that idea to them, and hopefully then they will take the Promissory Note. The second way is to sacrifice a mech, because the card says, after any player activates a system, you may remove this unit from the game board to place or move a Creuss wormhole token into this system. So in the example I've prepared here, we got a mech and some units out here on Archon Whale, and we want to get them to Primor because we have this public objective that says have units in 2 systems that contain legendary planets, Megator Rex or Anomalies. And since Primor is a legendary planet, then we really want to go there. But unfortunately for us, our carrier cannot go through the beta wormholes and reach Primor because it does not have enough movement. So if we activate on Primor here, then we can sacrifice the mech, place either an alpha or beta wormhole. It doesn't matter for us because we treat those as adjacent. So 1, 2. Now our carrier starts in a beta wormhole, so Slipstream kicks in and it got movement 2. And of course gravity drive would help with that as well. But it didn't even have to be our turn or us utilizing the wormhole. It might as well have been Federation of Sol that activated here, and then we could have sacrificed a mech here to place the beta wormhole if we wanted to do it at that point in time. I find it more situational to sacrifice a mech for a wormhole compared to the Promissory Note, but also compared to the factional tech called the Wormhole Generator that I will come to in a minute. But sacrificing a mech can be useful, especially in the late game. And finally, we have the faction technology called Wormhole Generator. It requires 2 blue technologies before we can research it, but we start with gravity drive, so we just need 1 more blue technology before we can get it. Wormhole Generator says, action, exhaust this card to place or move a Creuss wormhole token into either a system that contains a planet you control or a non-home system that does not contain another player's ships. This is by far the most flexible way for us to get our wormholes out on the game board, because we are in complete control of when and where to place them, of course within the limitations mentioned on the card. But if we can't get the wormholes out in other ways in the beginning of the game, then we may not have to rush it, but I think it is a must get at some point during the game. Next we will have a look at how we can play the first round with the leadership strategy card, and then we will have a look at the hero. Alright, let's have a look at how the first round can go with the leadership strategy card. But besides our strategy card, we also got Federation of Sol with the warfare card, and they are one of the factions that are known for being able to delay playing their strategy card for a long time in the first round due to their orbital drop faction ability. And then we got diplomacy, politics, trade and technology in the game, and I will bet that the Federation of Sol will delay playing that card as long as possible in this example as well. But since we have the leadership card, we go first and we activate out here on Arenam and Mir, and we will go out there with our carrier, 2 infantry and 2 fighters. And the reason why we go for these 2 planets instead of Malice is because we have a total of 6 influence here instead of the 3 on Malice, and we got the diplomacy in the game, so we can do the secondary of that to unexhaust these 2 planets. But let's have a look at what we get. Arenam first. You may gain 1 commodity, or you may spend 1 trade good or 1 commodity to draw 1 action card. And that is given. We can only get a commodity. And let's have a look at Mir. Rich World. Attach. This planet's resource value is increased by 1, and that is probably the worst attachment we could get on Mir here, because we will probably never use that single resource, as we will use the influence to buy more command tokens. And now it gets to be the other players, and the Federation of Sol is probably moving out here with a carrier and 3 infantry, and it gets to be us again. And now we can activate out here in the beta wormhole and move a destroyer out there. That will probably also make us neighbors with the blue player, which is of course good, so we can do future trades. But it also gets us a little closer to unlocking our commander that says have units in 3 systems that contain alpha or beta wormholes. And now the Cabal player decides to play the diplomacy card, do the secondary of that by paying a token there, and then we can unexhaust these 2 planets. And the Federation of Sol is probably orbital dropping a few infantry out here, and when it gets to be us again, we now have unexhausted these 2 planets, so we might as well play the leadership card and gain 3 command tokens for that, and buy 2 more on these 2 planets, place them like this. And now it gets to be the warfare player, and he will probably move out here, and it gets to be us again, and we can activate here. And now we're also neighbors with the Federation of Sol, and they are 4 commodity factions, so they are also interesting to trade with in future game rounds. But he is still not playing the warfare strategy card, which is of course a little bit annoying. So now we have to make what is called a stall action, and that is simply to activate a system just to wait, and it gets to be everybody else again. And now he decides to Starforge 2 more units into his home system, and now it gets to be the warfare player, and he finally decides to play the warfare card, and then he removes this token here, and we of course do the secondary of that. So we spend a token, and we want to produce 1 carrier and 2 fighters for the 4 resources on our home system. And when it gets to be us again, we can activate out on Malice here. Let's start by flipping the planet, and then we can put the token on here, and we will fly out there with all the units we have in our home system. And let's see what we get. Freelancers. You may produce 1 unit in this system. You may spend influence as if it were resources to produce this unit. But unfortunately we don't have any resources or influence, so we will just gain control of the planet. But we can of course take 2 trade goods. And after this I would pass for this game round. So now we have gotten control of 2 systems because we could produce the second carrier, and we have prepared for unlocking our commander, and we also became neighbors with both the blue and the yellow player so that we can do trade with them in future game rounds. In this first round demonstration I forgot to hand out the Creuss Promissory Note, and we even had a commodity on our faction sheet, so if another player was a little hesitant to take the Promissory Note for us, they could have earned a trade good by doing so and place a wormhole out on the game board. But I forgot, and that can happen. But now let's have a look at the hero. The hero is really fun to play, not because it will secure us the victory, but because it will get everybody's attention whenever you decide to play it. The card says, action, swap the positions of any 2 systems that contain wormholes or your units other than the Creuss system and the wormhole nexus, then purchase this card. And we are now in the late game, and we want to try and score this stage 2 public objective, control the borderlands, have units in 5 systems on the edge of the game board other than your home system. We already have units in 3 systems on the edge of the game board because the Creuss gate is also considered on the edge, and our home system is out here. So in this example we want to gain control of these 2 systems over here, so we can play the hero like so, and then we get to swap the 2 systems. So we get our primary fleet out on the edge of the game board, and we move the red primary fleet into the middle of the galaxy. And without a fight, we have gained control of our 4th system out on the edge of the game board, and now we can try and take the 5th one when we get our next action. There are only 2 system tiles that cannot be moved with the hero, and that is Malice and our home system. All other systems are up for grabs, so go write history. And now let's have the final first round demonstration with the technology card. And this is my second most preferred strategy card for round 1. And lastly, we have the first round demonstration with the technology card. And this would be my second pick after the trade one. And that is because then we are no longer dependent on the other players on when this card is actually being played. So as our first action, we will move out to Arenam and Mir, just like before. And let's see what we get. Let's check Arenam first. Local fabricators, and then we get 1 commodity like so, and on Mir we get a relic fragment. Alright, and all the other players take their turns and we're no longer dependent on the warfare player, which is great. So we might as well play the technology card now, and then we will get the sling relay technology. And then when it gets to be our turn again, we will flip sling relay and use 3 of the 4 resources to produce 1 carrier in our home system. And then as our third action, we can activate out on Malice and fly out there with our new carrier, 2 infantry and 1 destroyer. And let's see what we get here. Oh, that was a planet attachment. And now it's not a 0-3 but a 0-5 planet. That's pretty awesome. And we will exhaust this at the end of our turn to gain 2 trade goods. And then as our last action, we can fly our destroyer out and either become neighbors with the blue player or the yellow player, or just activate the Creuss gate here to prevent other players from flying into our home system. So, but in this example, we will just activate out here in the beta wormhole so that we get closer to unlocking our commander. So we have pretty much obtained the same thing with the technology card as we did with the trade strategy card, except for we could produce a whole lot more units with the trade card. So that is why it is my first pick. With Malice becoming a 5 influence planet, and we had already taken control of Mir with 4 influence on it, then if the timing was right with the diplomacy and the leadership card, then we could have unexhausted those 2 planets on the secondary of diplomacy, and then we could have bought 3 more command tokens on the secondary of leadership. So what I'm trying to say here is that it is often a good idea to grab those planets as early as possible in the game round, so that we have more options when the other players decide to play their strategy cards. And now let's have a look at the technologies I would suggest that you research when you are playing this faction. When it comes to technology, I found the 3 ones here in the middle that I think are must-haves for the Ghost player, and then we got 5 technologies around it that is more situational and nice to have. But we start with Gravity Drive, and then I think we should go for the Sling Relay as demonstrated in some of the first round examples, so we can produce that second carrier from round 1. Then I think we should go for the Wormhole Generator, so we can place these Creuss wormhole tokens out on the game board. And lastly, I think we should go for Lightwave Deflectors, so that our units can fly through systems that contain other player ships for maximum flexibility when it comes to moving around the game board. And as a unit upgrade, I think we should go for the Carrier 2. Then we get an increased movement value and an increased capacity. And it also goes well with the Commander that I haven't covered yet. But it says, after your ships move, for each ship that has a capacity value and move through 1 or more wormholes, you may place 1 fighter from your reinforcements with that ship if you have unused capacity in the active system. So that simply means that every time a carrier or a dreadnought, for example, goes through a wormhole, then we get to place 1 fighter with that ship. And after the Carrier 2, we could consider going for the Dimensional Splicer, our other faction technology. And since we get all these Creuss wormholes out on the table, and we will most likely have units in those wormholes, then with this technology we can produce 1 hit every time we start a space combat in one of those wormholes. But it requires a red technology before we can research it. So if we don't have a red technology specialty planet like Mir here, then I would suggest that we go for the AI development algorithm, because that will give us easier access to some of the other unit upgrade technologies that we may want. And it will also give us a production discount whenever we produce units during the game round based on the number of unit upgrades that we own. And lastly, we have anti-mass deflectors. So if we start with the asteroid field that contains a wormhole, this is the single system in the game that is like this, but then we may consider getting anti-mass deflectors, even though it is a little annoying to spend time and resources on doing so, but it could be necessary. And lastly, we have Dark Energy Tap, and that is because our Creuss Gate will contain a frontier token, but we are also very flexible to get around the game board, so there could be many more frontier tokens that we actually have a chance to explore. But I think these technologies are more situational and very much depends on how much tech is going to be researched during that current game. And if you want to learn more about all of these technologies, you can click the playlist up here. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more Twilight Imperium content. And if you want to check out your opponent's factions, you can find more faction guides here.